For us, it's a daily thing.
It's every day, right?
This is Mammoth Daily
We're going to take you inside the locker room
with Mike Fulta.
We want this show to be about the fans, and we want this show to be driven by our Utah Mammoth community.
And Adrian Denny.
Fans can submit what they want to hear us talk about, what they want to hear Utah weigh in on. It's all going to be here.
Here's Mike and AD with you.
Utahns, countrymen, lend me your ears.
Right here on Mammoth Daily.
The Utah Mammoth are kicking off a 5-game road trip here tonight in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. That's where I'm coming to you from. I'm Mike Fulta here alongside Adrian Denny. We are your Hockey Night in Utah crew. AD, I said it as I was bidding you adieu on the radio broadcast and hustling to the plane on Sunday afternoon. I said, after what looked to be one of the worst losses of the season against a young Blackhawks team, there is no better time to start a road trip than right now.
Yeah, and it's been a long time. Like, it seems like yesterday, Mike, we were doing the last road game before March, and here we are in March, over a month straight at home around the Olympic break. But Mike, I think it's a great time for the Mammoth to get out on the road, right? A 5-game trip over 8 nights. They've been pretty solid on the road. They've won their last 3 games to open a road trip. Pittsburgh, Islanders, Nashville. In their last 11 road games, they're 6-5, right? They have become a good road team once they kind of got through that slog. And so they're taking on a Caps team tonight, Mike, that I think looks almost identical to Utah if you look at metrics and numbers. Every single number seems to be identical between the Mammoth and Caps down to their records. You got the Mammoth 31-25-4, Washington 31-24-7. But Mike, there's good times to come home, and I think this is a good time to get out on the road with a trip that I think the Mammoth can have success on, and they've been a good road team outside of that slog, right? The Canada slog in November, the 6-game slog in December. In October, they won the first 3 games of that 4-game trip. And when things have normalized out, it's been a solid road team.
3 more games in the Eastern time zone this season for the Utah Mammoth, all 3 on this road trip. It will be Washington, Philly, and then the Columbus Blue Jackets. We have our Tuesday Mailbag coming up in a little bit. We also have an NHL insider, David Pagnotta, the editor-in-chief from the 4th period, is going to be joining us on our 3rd period. He is also a host and analyst on SiriusXM's NHL channel. So we'll get some trade scoops, some insight from David coming up in a little bit. But AD, let's first set up the game tonight in Washington. The Capitals coming off a 6-2 loss against the Montreal Canadiens, but they've been pretty good as of late. They've won 6 of their last 8. That span goes back, obviously, before the Olympic break. Alexander Ovechkin, of course, set the NHL all-time goal-scoring record last season. This year, 24 goals. Pretty darn good for a guy who is 40 years old and still the captain of the Washington Capitals. Power play has oddly been struggling, and that's probably why Ovechkin's totals aren't up into the 40s as they were last year in the goal-scoring department. But this is a really big game for Washington. As we record this on Monday, the Caps are a couple points out of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, and they also are giving up a few games to Boston, the team in front of them. Boston has 3 games in hand. And so if the Capitals lose tonight, and if Boston wins tonight against the Pittsburgh Penguins, that's going to put Washington 4 points out, and Boston would still have those 3 games in hand. With the trade deadline approaching, this is kind of one of those, yellow canary in the coal mine situations for Washington. Do the Capitals sell off a piece or two before the deadline, or do they try and add a piece or two thinking they have a chance to make the postseason?
Yeah, there's several teams that have pivotal weeks this week. Like, a game could go one way or another that determines if they're a buyer or seller. But Mike, how about these numbers in terms of comparing these two teams head to head? Washington averages 3.16 goals a game. Utah, 3.17. Caps allow 2.98. Utah, 2.78. Power plays are what they are. Caps, as you have right there, 15.5%. Utah a tick above them at 15.9%. Penalty kills, right around 80%. Two really good 5-on-5 teams. The ratio of 5-on-5 goals for or against, 1.20 for the Caps, 1.23 for the Mammoth. They're 7th and 10th in the NHL in regulation wins. So that's the first tiebreaker in the playoff race. They've got 3 20-goal scorers, just like the Mammoth, which is near the top of the NHL. Alexander, Ovechkin, Tom Wilson, Jacob Chychrun. For the Mammoth, of course, Peterka, Schmaltz, and Gunther, as you quizzed me in the middle of action on Sunday. So Utah back on the road, 6-5 in their last 11, 8-6 in their last 14 overall. And it's a nice little test against a Washington team who's got an identical record as Utah, basically, at home. Mammoth 18-10-2, Washington 19-10-3. Mike, have you looked at numbers like that? Never seen anything more similar to the Mammoth than what I just recited against the Caps? Looking at the stat report.
I haven't looked at that many numbers since calculus class. I think you should be a lecturer. But and how about this, AD? Both teams coming off of 4-goal losses as well into this game here tonight. One big element for the Capitals that can't be overlooked is the return of Pierre-Luc Dubois, one of their top centermen. He had been injured for most of the season, had got hurt back in October, had surgery on his abdomen area and his adductor muscles as well. So he's been missing for a ton of the season. He was one of their leading scorers last year, obviously a big piece for them on the power play as well. Only played in 10 games so far this season. This is going to be his 4th game back from injury, and he has 3 goals in 3 games since coming back. So that's been a huge missing piece for Washington this year that they had last year when they were the top team in the Eastern Conference. They ended up losing in the second round to Carolina in 5 games. But AD, I look at this season compared to last season for Washington, and we don't see the Caps a ton out here, but they haven't had Pierre-Luc Dubois for a lot of this year. And get this, they had 12 guys last season who had career highs in either goals, assists, or points. 12 regular contributors who essentially had career seasons. They haven't had that same outbreak this season. And so it's been a bit of a step back in that regard. And this Capitals team was thought to be a rebuilding group when Spencer Carberry took over. He proved that was not going to be the case, and they've been a dominant force the last couple of years, not as much this year, but it does feel like the tapering off of this Capitals group that's going to have some decisions to make with Ovechkin and John Carlson being unrestricted free agents at the end of this year.
Yeah, Mike, and it's taken some research to get up to speed on Washington because we haven't seen them in over a year. February 9th of 2025, the last game before the Four Nations break, the Wild one. Mammoth jumped up 2-0 with a couple early goals and ended up winning at 5-4 in the shootout. Nick Schmaltz, the shootout game winner. Last team that Utah will face this season that they haven't seen yet, the Caps, and we'll see them twice in March. We'll see them on March 26th at the Delta Center. So twice in a month against Washington. Kind of the unknown team for Utah. We just haven't seen any of them.
Yeah, and that changes tonight in our nation's capital. So the Caps healthy for the most part right now. It'll be a great test for the Utah Mammoth against a Washington team that is playing with as much desperation as anybody in the National Hockey League right now. So I mentioned how they've struggled on the power play, but a very good 5-on-5 team. It's a veteran group. Obviously, they have the greatest goal scorer in NHL history, Alexander Ovechkin, but also just a ton of other excellent contributors up and down the lineup. And I think Spencer Carberry has excelled at getting the most out of his players. You look at guys like Alexi Protas, who's become a 20-goal scorer in the NHL after he was He had nowhere near those numbers his first couple years. Ethan Frank, who was an AHL call-up, he's in the double-digit goals this year. Anthony Beauvillier, Justin Sordiff, who was kind of a minor leaguer essentially in Florida. The Caps traded for him in the offseason. He's got over 10 goals this year as well. Connor McMichael is the sixth leading scorer on this team with 31 points this year. So I give a lot of credit to Spencer Carberry, as he's received a lot of credit over the last couple of years, but this season as well. How about this? Jacob Chychrun, 22 goals as a defenseman. He had 20-something goals last year. He had exactly 20 with Washington. He has 22 this year. So when I was saying some guys who had career years aren't having career years again this year, Chychrun's the opposite of that. He is built on that incredible year that he had a season ago.
Yeah, and Chychrun's a guy that's known to guys like Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Lawson Krause starting out together in the NHL. Schmaltz, of course, was traded from Chicago and joined the group, but he got traded to Ottawa, and it wasn't a great fit for him there. About a year and a half with the Sens, and it was like, oh gosh, this didn't go well, and then instantly went to Washington. It was a huge part of them fighting for the best record in the NHL last year. And Mike Spencer Carberry is a coach for Washington. He's kind of part of this new age, this new generation of NHL coaches. And I've been familiar with him for years because when I was first starting as a broadcaster at the ECHL, he was first starting as a player with the Bakersfield Condors. And he's a guy that had a nice ECHL career, parlayed it into an ECHL assistant coaching job in South Carolina under Jared Bednar and that group there, who's currently the coach of Colorado. Led South Carolina to success, became a coach in the OHL, went back to the AHL as an assistant, was the head coach for Washington and their AHL team in Hershey. And then he went to the Toronto Maple Leafs, ran their power play for a couple years. And I think he was always on their radar to ultimately bring him back to take over the Caps. But if you ever watch Spencer Carberry doing his media availabilities, his post-game interviews, he's you can just tell that he's a good communicator, and he'd be a fun guy to play for, and he answers every question with detail, and he's just got an upbeat personality. So Spencer Carberry is a guy that I followed for a while, and one of my favorites in the NHL.
Going back to Chychrun real quick, he was traded from Arizona to Ottawa a couple years back. You mentioned that. Do you remember the haul that Arizona got back for Chychrun by chance? There were 3 picks, and one of them was very high. Arizona received a conditional first in the 23 draft, a conditional second in the 24 draft, and a second-round pick in the 2026 draft. So a first and 2 seconds. That's a pretty good haul.
That 2023 pick, is that the one that turned into Daniil Boot?
And that's why I brought it up. So it's
okay.
Daniil Boot, the biggest part of the trade that comes back to the Arizona, now Utah organization in exchange for current Washington Capitals defenseman Jacob Chychrun. AD, let's get to that mailbag. I know we have a bunch of fun stuff to dive into here on our Tuesday Mailbag edition of Mammoth Daily. And then David Pagnotta coming up with some Inside the NHL, a look around the league.
It's time for the Tuesday Mailbag.
Some great submissions in this week's Tuesday Mailbag. You can always submit questions in the YouTube comments. You can ask us on Twitter. I am at Mike_Folta. He is at 801 Adrian Denny. I am Mikey Folta on Instagram. He is at 801 Adrian Denny again on Instagram. He was much smarter and kept his social media handles synonymous with one another. So good job, Adrian, on that. And good job putting this mailbag together, because I've seen some of the blurbs that you have prepared for us, and I'm excited to get into these.
Yeah, this is a good mailbag. Let's start with this one right here. Comes to us from Jordan Mike. He says, a year ago, we were fighting hard for a playoff spot, and in the last year, our team hasn't changed a substantial amount. Yes, we've added players. Is that the difference this year, or has the culture within the team changed? There are lessons, it was a younger team last year. This year, they've they've got the experience from last year, more veterans, and I think it's kind of all come together to be where they're at.
I agree with what you said. I think you've seen the veteran players take steps in their own respective roles. Like Nick Schmaltz is having a career year, stepped into the center position and has been one of the reasons why Utah is one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. I think you've got a new guy, Nate Schmidt, who's playing very well, but also bringing out the best in John Marino, a guy who was already here. So those two are playing extremely well together, and just the cumulative effect of expectations and competitive guys in that room who are looking to get better. Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley on pace to have great years. And for Cooley's, obviously, you have to look at more of a points per game number because he's missed so much time. But Gunther's taken that next step as a goal scorer. We've seen Clayton Keller probably not going to have the same offensive year, but I think him and Schmaltz have been great defensively, as I said. And you can go on down the list, right? But I think it's the cumulative effect of expectations and competitive guys trying to drag this team into the postseason.
Let's get to another mailbag question here on coaches. This is a fun one, Mike. This comes to us from The Dark Knight Rises. He says, I think Bear's done an incredible job this season coaching the team. He's on my list for Coach of the Year, the Jack Adams Award. Who else? He has John Cooper, Dan Muse of Pittsburgh. Those are his other finalists. Who would be your finalists, Mike, for Coach of the Year? You look at the standings in the NHL, there are some nice coaching jobs that have been done.
Yeah, I think those two guys that our good friend Dark Knight Rises brought up, Cooper and Muse, would have to be at the top of the list. Think of the Lightning and John Cooper. You lose Hedman for long stretches of the season. They've been so banged up on their back end, but whoever they plug in there, this year it's been Darren Radish, former Utah Grizzly, Charles Edouard Dastu, whoever it's been has worked for them. And so John Cooper's never won a Jack Adams before somehow, even though the Lightning have been one of the best teams in the league for a decade. It's high time he gets one. Dan Muse and the Pittsburgh Penguins are one of the best stories in the NHL right now. Even though they don't have Sidney Crosby, they continue to win. He certainly is worth a look. How about Patrick Waugh on Long Island? The New York Islanders, a team that everybody thought was going to be picking in the lottery again this year. And what do you know? The Isles, as we record this, are third in the Metro and have been in that spot, winning big games night after night. They've won 3 straight games after trailing by multiple goals in each of those. So those are the 3 that I look at. And I agree. I think Bear's done a great job. And anytime you're seeing guys have career seasons year after year, I think that says a lot about the coaching. And we've seen that here in Utah.
The John Cooper one, Mike, is just mind-boggling. The stuff that he's done, and he's never been Coach of the Year. How about Lindy Ruff in Buffalo? They got a second place team right now. You got Marco Sturm in Boston. They were thought to be in, I don't know, retool, refurbish, rebuild mode. They're in a playoff spot, as we talked about, trying to fend off the Caps. How about Joel Quenneville in Anaheim? Taking that team. They've had their ups and downs, but they're on the verge of taking over first place in the Pacific Division. They're the hottest team in that division coming out of the Olympic break. They've won 5 straight games. They're just a point in back of Vegas.
All great points. Who was the first one? Lindy Ruff, you said. That you definitely have to throw him in, I think, because the Sabres, they're not just flirting with the playoffs. They're in one of the top spots in one of the most competitive divisions in hockey. So nobody saw that coming, and Lindy Ruff definitely deserves a lot of credit. I don't love the way we do the Jack Adams just because it seems like there's a rule. You have to be in the playoffs to win the Jack Adams. And like last year, I thought Dean Evison and Columbus deserved a ton of credit. They missed the playoffs just barely, but they lose their leading scorer to tragedy before the year. They're expected to be a lottery team, and they were competitive all the way through. I think a guy like that should be in the conversation because really it's based on your team's results above expected, right? Is that fair to say? Like, it's not just the best team every year, but there's a lot of nuance
Mike,
to it.
you know who to blame on the Jack Adams Award if you don't like who wins it. It's voted on by the broadcasters. So if you have any complaints, folks, take them right to Mike Folta and Matt McConnell.
I got my email. I got my email the other day, and we're not filling out ballots just yet. But I got that email, and I was like, "Oh, better start thinking about that." So great timing, Dark Knight Rises.
And you can't vote for your own coach, right? You can't vote for Bear, correct?
I believe so. I can't remember, but I believe that's the case.
All right, let's take one from Alan. Alan's got a two-parter for us, Mike. He says, why do they have the same national anthem singer for every game? And, you know, Mike, it's kind of a hockey tradition. A lot of teams have the same anthem singer, like the Mammoth have the great voice of Kaylee Busio before every game. How about Jim Cornelison in Chicago, Renee Rancourt in Boston? Couple sets of pipes right there. Not every team does it, Mike, as you see it going from arena to arena, but a lot do have the same anthem singer every night. Nashville has had one, but they'll mix in some celebrities, like some big country music talent. Luke Bryan, Carrie Underwood, Vince Gill, Little Big Town have all sung anthems for the Predators at the chagrin of their everyday anthem singer. That was a story 5-6 years ago. The national anthem singer stepping aside for a celebrity singer in Music City. But what would you say, Mike? Majority of teams do have the same national anthem singer.
I really don't know why that's a thing in hockey. I love that it is, because I think it makes the anthem more special. It makes it more of a, it's unique to each respective community, and there are some that are better than others. You definitely find that out as you tour around. Adrian, you learn that, similar to hockey players, anthem singers have to fight their way up through the minor leagues, and when you're in the minor leagues, sometimes you get a minor league anthem singer. And I've been standing at attention for a couple who forgot words or had just a voice crack, which it happens to all of us, right? Like we're performers. We're not perfect vocally either. I don't know why it's the same every game. I think Jim Cornelison is incredible. And that anthem in Chicago, when everybody's cheering and clapping, it is a very special atmosphere at United Center when Cornelison sings the anthem. I wish every anthem was like that. It's really cool. Have you heard this too, Adrian? That apparently a lot of artists, like big artists, don't love to do the anthem because it's kind of a high risk, low reward endeavor. Like, if you do the anthem well, join the club. But if you mess it up, all of a sudden you've gone viral. Have you heard that before?
I have not, but I get it, because that is the truth. And especially in this age of social media and going viral, and Mike, people pile on, and that's totally something I get.
Alan, thanks for the question. I see number 2 here. Can I read it, AD? I know that's your gig.
No, feel free, Mike.
Okay. This is from Alan. So a 2-parter. My 4-year-old has been wearing all his hockey gear. We're wondering, do the Mammoth players typically wear leggings underneath? And the answer is yes. Yes, they do. They typically have, like long johns, so to speak, what Adrian wears under his suit. But usually like long compression leggings underneath. And a lot of times they have, some grip near the shins that helps their socks stay up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you can buy these compressions for $30 on Amazon. But yeah, thanks for the submission, Alan.
Yeah, and I texted our assistant equipment manager, Maddie Schwagman, as well, and He said about 75%, Mike, do the compression pants. Here's another one, Mike. You can read this one if you like, because it's for you.
Well, hold on. Can you hear that at all? You hear like a jackhammering?
I don't hear it.
Okay, good. We're at our hotel in DC, and no, we are not being attacked by a Black Hawk helicopter. There is some extremely loud construction that's actually across the street, and it started at 10 this morning. I guess that was the wake-up call. They're like, all right, it's 10 in the morning. If you're not out of bed now, you're about to be. And it's been going on all day. It's extremely loud. But I'm glad it's not making its way through the microphone. First world problems. Anyway, this is from Brett, one of our favorites on the mailbag. He says, AD, you can take a couple minutes off here. This is for Mike. On a road trip, what is a typical day for you and for the players? What do they typically do, and how does it differ from being at home? So we're recording this on Monday, which is an off day. We got into DC around midnight last night, and no practice today, an off day, which is not super common on the road. But on an off day, it's just that. Like, a lot of players will get a stretch in or a little workout in. Teams typically rent out like a conference room at the hotel. It's just a big space where they can set up the massage tables, have breakfast, and kind of have everybody in one place, maybe do some calisthenics, some stretching, things like that. So guys can do that at certain times, but really they have the whole day to hang out. Some guys will go see a movie. Guys will go have meals together a lot of time, or explore a city. On a practice day on the road, we typically practice around midday or late morning. And so your morning from like 10 o'clock through 2 o'clock, 2:30 is usually taken up with practice activities. And then later in the day is, dinner with the guys and stuff like that. For me, I go to pretty much all the practices and morning skates and things like that. So I'm doing those, but I do try to explore cities as well. And here in DC, I've got some family. I'm going to go to dinner with them on Monday night, visit Arlington, and so there's usually like a segment of time, a couple hours where you can break free and do something unique. But to be honest, AD, like with our schedule this year, it's been a lot of just getting ready for games the next day, and you have a chance to explore a city, but we also have jobs to do, and one of those is recording this show, which takes up some time as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, Mike. When you're in the NHL, everything moves so fast. We talked about this Sunday after the game. There's not time to dwell. You're moving forward. Everybody has a unique job. There's huge staffs. Everybody has an important task, and it is pick up and go, set up, play, pick up and go on the way, and moving forward. Hustle and bustle. Here's one, Mike. Let's put your science background and expertise back to work. Puckhead92 said, who wins in a team fight between a mammoth, a Bruin, and a duck versus a predator, a panther, and a penguin? We're doing 3-on-3 overtime with a mammoth, a Bruin, and a duck versus a saber-toothed predator, a panther, and a penguin. Talking about animals, not hockey players. I like this.
Yeah, this is a little Mike Leach impersonation right here. If anybody knows that great clip of him wondering who would win amongst a battle royale of Pac-12 mascots. This is interesting, 3-on-3. I think my biggest concern with the Predator, Panther, Penguin combo would be that the Panther and the Predator, both members of the feline community, would be able to communicate and thus potentially work in tandem against us. I'm not worried about the Penguin all that much. I mean, a beak, flightless bird, really nothing they can do. But then again, I'm also not worried about our duck that we have on our team, the Mammoth, the Bruin, and a duck. I think the advantage the duck would be reconnaissance. We could use the duck's aerial point of view to scout out locations, but then again, comes into effect communication. How does a Mammoth communicate with a duck and a Bruin? Are we all three on our own? Do we have a shared language? I'd like to establish some lines of communication. First of all, we definitely have the poundage on our side here between the Mammoth and the Bruin. There's no doubt. I think this should be a pretty straightforward fight unless the Predator and Panther can team up and use their combined intelligence against us, in which case they might be able to pick us off one by one.
I think you're right on the money there with the duck, Mike. You can utilize some of the characteristics of the duck. I don't know what you're doing with the Penguin. That's a 3-on-2. The Penguin can't move, right? It's friendly, it's nice, but we're talking about 3-on-3 sudden death overtime here, Mike, in a fight, and I don't know how you utilize the Penguin to any advantage. So to me, that's what it comes down to.
I think between the tusks of the Mammoth and the claws of the Bruin, we should be able to dispatch. Oh, the thing is, if you look at any of those animals one-on-one against the Mammoth or against the Bruin, you feel pretty good about the Mammoth and Bruin's chances, right? I think the only way we can lose is if the Predator and Panther, are able to take down the Bruin first and then go for the Mammoth. And I'd like to know how big a saber-toothed tiger is, because that's the Predator we're talking about here. If it's a Predator like from the movie Predator, then that's a different story, and we've got a whole different battle on our hands. But how big is this saber-toothed tiger here? That has to be taken into account. But I feel good about our side.
Yeah, great question. This was a great mailbag question. Feel free to submit more along these same lines, and we'll break it down. Well, Mike will, and then I'll throw in a punchline at the end. Final question here on this Tuesday mailbag edition, Mike, and it comes to us from our good buddy Brock. He says, Mike, what do all of your notes around the edges mean? Because you tweeted your preparation on Sunday. He says, what do all those notes mean on all of your notes? And yes, if I, Adrian, also have any special notes for each game.
Well, we know that you don't come prepared. You just show up, right? So you even take notes. Adrian has this enormous binder that he shows up with that has, is it all game sheets? What's in there?
Yeah, my green binder has all the box scores, which is, if you can go to NHL.com, anybody can get this, and it's got kind of the team stats, and then it's got the individual stats, and put them in a plastic paper separator deal and pop it into the binder, and then Mike, something happens in a game that, some stuff is easier to look up when you can just thumb to it versus digitally. Like if you're going back, what's the earliest goal that we've scored, right? How many times have we scored in the first 5 minutes? Sometimes it's just easier to thumb through every game. So I've got the binder, but Mike, I've got a comparison here because I know it doesn't sound like it, Brock, but I prepare the same for Hockey Night in Utah just as if I was calling the game in a lot of capacities, but the model is there. And as we put it up on the screen, for those of you on Mammoth Plus, SEG Plus, and YouTube, here are the comparisons. You've got my notebook on the left and Mike's printed papers on the right.
Adrian has his mad scientist scratch pad. He has the handwriting of a doctor or a lawyer. A lot of great stuff on there, I'm sure, Adrian, but Most of it looks like hieroglyphics for me. You can see mine. I type mine up. I used to do these boards by hand, and that would just take way too long. It's funny. We have a great PR staff between David Piper, Rachel Borst. They do the game notes for us. And Adrian, in addition to the notes we already get, keeps his own notes, which have a couple things that they don't normally include in the NHL game notes. And so I always love having those. There's nobody that shows up to a game more prepared than my partner, Adrian Denny. But you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, there's some scribbles kind of in the margins at the top of my board, and you can see them now if you're watching. I don't know if that's an even better visual, but these scribbles are extra notes on players. A lot of the things I have typed out on here are more permanent items, like where a player was drafted, where they've spent time in their career, and then game by game, I will write in by hand some more timely notes, like Sean Durzi has points in 3 of his last 4. Or something of that nature. There are also some scribbles up in the top margins. Adrian, these are words I want to get in, or descriptions I want to get in throughout the game, and this is how I try and expand my vocabulary on air. I've got a few different categories of words, where different words for a player shooting a puck. He lasers it. He launches one. He uncorks a shot. He rifles it. I have things like that written down, or a player going to a location on the ice. He darts ahead. He trots into the offensive zone. He negotiates his way through center. I have things like that written on there as well, and I'll look at them time to time throughout a broadcast to try and stay fresh.
We had a first-time situation on Sunday, Mike. I used a word that you've never used or considered using before, and I think you liked it, and it might end up on future sheets if I was picking up what you were putting down.
What was it again? Can you remind me?
It was tickled.
Well, it stood out to me because of the way you used it, but you also use another phrase quite commonly involving the word tickled. When you're happy about something, you'll say, "I'm tickled pink," which I think is a hilarious way of describing something, but or describing someone who's happy. But that it stood out to me in my mind because of those 2 instances where I've heard you use it.
I don't know where I picked up tickled pink from, Mike, other than I had grandparents who were born in the 20s, and I don't think I got it from Grandma Grace or Grandpa Tim and Grandma Liz, but you could probably go back to them for some of the words in my vocabulary that I use that maybe some folks little younger generations whose grandparents are a little younger than mine hadn't heard before.
If anybody has any great verbs that they think I should use during a broadcast, or Adrian should use during a broadcast, please feel free to leave them in the comments, or to hit us up on Twitter. Make sure you give us a name and where you're from as well, so we can attribute them when we cite your words on our radio broadcast. But does that wrap up our mailbag, AD?
Yeah, that's it, Mike. A record 6 mailbag questions. We wanted to fly through as many as possible, so thanks everybody for sending in the letters. You can do it throughout the week. You can drop a comment on YouTube, hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, 5-star rating on Apple. Also, Mike, we're still soliciting topics for our Friday free-for-all.
That's right.
Coming up. And if we pick a topic that is submitted by one of our day-to-dayers, we've got gift cards to the team store to distribute out. So there's a topic that's come up that you want me and Mike to talk about in the Friday free-for-all, send it in. And we'll attribute that along with the words that you send in, because, Mike, while the NHL is a copycat league, not on Hockey Night in Utah, is it?
Can't wait for that. But first, we've got the Washington Capitals tonight, and then the Philadelphia Flyers coming up on Thursday. Stick around, though, because we had fun on the mailbag, AD. We're about to get serious. Coming up in our third period, David Pagnotta from the fourth period will join me in a conversation about the trade deadline, about his insights from around the National Hockey League. That's up next, right here on Mammoth Daily.
This is Mammoth Daily.
Excited for a very special guest in today's third period, David Pagnotta, editor-in-chief of the fourth period. You see him on NHL Network. You hear him on SiriusXM. He is on the beat for all 32 NHL teams. And the rumblings, he hears a lot of stuff. He picks up a lot of insight on what teams might be looking for, what they're looking to part ways with. So we wanted to bring David on to this Tuesday third period with the trade deadline coming up Friday at 1. Mammoth Daily is your spot for everything to get you ready for what you might hear leading up to Friday, what you might not hear, what to look out for. Let's get to Mike and David Pagnotta.
We are pleased on Mammoth Daily now to be joined by David Pagnotta, editor-in-chief of the fourth period, contributor on NHL Network, host and analyst on SiriusXM's NHL channel. You can find him at the fourth period on Twitter. David, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us. This has got to be your busy season, right? Is this your Stanley Cup Finals right now, trade deadline week?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, it's just team no sleep is definitely in effect for this entire week. Keeping the phone charged, keeping the coffee brewing, and get to sleep on Saturday, I guess.
It's an exciting time for us in Utah because it's the first trade deadline we're getting to where the team is currently in a playoff spot and maybe in a position to add. It feels different than it did last year. But before we get to the Mammoth, let's just talk overall the climate. A few weeks ago, it felt like everybody was in the mix for the playoffs. Now we're starting to establish some separation in the playoff mix. How do you see the trade market right now in terms of the number of sellers and the number of buyers?
Yeah, it's definitely picking up, and going back to the I guess the end of that week, right into or right at the end of the Winter Olympics, excuse me. That's when talks really started to percolate around the league and really start to intensify going into this first week back from the Olympics. And now that we're into trade deadline week, it continues to be a pretty steadfast increase in the number of conversations that are going on around the league. Now, some of these teams that were kind of, bubble teams that were on the cusp, they're a few points out after the break, wanting to get a better understanding if they could gain any ground or momentum. Some of those teams have regressed a little bit. The first few games out of the break haven't gone exactly as planned, and that may potentially increase the number of sellers that are going to be out there. The one thing with respect to the sellers market, it sounds like there are more options in the seller's side versus the options to buy. And by that, I mean, you have some teams like Vancouver and St. Louis that have a multitude of players available. This isn't just one or two pieces that they're willing to listen on. They have several pieces on both their rosters that they're having conversations with teams about. And that's kind of jammed up the seller's market to a certain extent because, again, you may have 10 teams that are selling one or two pieces, but of those 10 teams, those couple of clubs have several players available. So things have definitely picked up. The buyers are looking at their options, and teams in a playoff spot, all of them, would love to help their club's chances and add some kind of piece between now and Friday's deadline.
One of the articles I've been keeping an eye on thefourthperiod.com is your 2026 Trade Watch List 4.0. I love that it now has 4 iterations. What are the hottest names and teams right now, and is there anything eminent to you as we sit here and record this on Monday?
Well, yeah, there's certainly some of the names, at the top of the list that continue to generate interest. Guys like Vinny Trocheck and Nazem Kadri, specifically. Some of the Blues players in Justin Falk and Braden Shen. A number of other players that are out there that continue to draw interest. And I mentioned the Vancouver Canucks before. Well, they've got Connor Garland. And at this time, we're still waiting on Tyler Myers and Drew O'Connor and others that are generating interest. There are a lot of different pieces that are out there, but some teams are kind of checking in on, one specific guy to see if they can pry him away. Like Calgary, for example, can we pry Nazem Kadri away? And for teams that are in that race, the teams that lose out, if they can't pull it off, they have to go in a different direction and see, is it a Trocheck? Is it a Shen? Is it, players XYZ outside of that that may become available. Boone Jenner in Columbus. What are the Jackets going to do with him? Are they going to hold on to their captain? Or if the right offer presents itself, are they going to look to potentially move him and generate some assets versus potentially losing him for nothing in July? So a lot of teams keeping tabs on a lot of these players on that list. And we can keep adding to it, but these are the guys that seem to be most available, or at least the ones drawing the most interest and the most chatter surrounding the NHL.
I like how you guys have teams interested listed under a lot of those guys. One of the names you mentioned, Vincent Trocheck, had, I think, Utah listed as one of those teams as of the writing of that article. And we keep hearing Utah mentioned in a lot of talks, but aside from the notable exception of Robert Thomas, which we'll get to in a little bit, but we haven't heard a ton specifically regarding Utah. What have you heard regarding the Mammoth, or at least what's the general sense that you get from Bill Armstrong and the front office group?
Yeah, it certainly, Mike, sounds like they want to add. There's no question about that they want to enhance this team even more and show their players that, hey, you guys have had a heck of a season. We want to reward you by making a deal to help push us forward and make some noise in the playoffs. Not just get there, but make some noise. One of the things that I spoke with Bill Armstrong earlier on in the season, towards the end of January, and one of the things that he indicated was, as much as they'd like to add, it has to be the right add. And they're not just going to mortgage the future for a short-term fix. Yep. So if they do something, if the Mammoth do add a significant piece to this roster, it's likely to be, well, because of it being a significant piece, it's going to cost a lot. In order to cost a lot, they want to make sure that they bring in somebody who's going to grow with this team well beyond this season, for the next several seasons as well, which is where a guy like Thomas makes sense because of the term tied to his deal. But even a Trocheck who has 3 more years on his contract, this isn't a short term, let's push for the playoffs now and figure out stuff in the offseason. He's got 3 more years on that deal. Any team that acquires him is going in with that mindset of not just bringing in this player to help us now, it's to help us over the duration of that term. And that seems to be what the priority is for a lot of teams, including the Mammoth. If they make that big type of acquisition, it's likely to be somebody with term. Doesn't mean that they're not going to potentially jump into the rental market if the prices are dropped, and it makes sense to bring in a depth piece or even an impact player on a lesser value type deal because of just how the market is playing out. But it seems like the priority would be bring in somebody who can help us now and down the road and grow with us as we continue to compete.
Thomas, Trocheck, 2 centers. Do you get an inkling that if the Mammoth do bring in a long-term piece like that, it would be somebody in that pivot position?
It looks like that's the priority. I was told that's not the be-all and end-all, that they are going to explore and have explored alternative options beyond that. But we know the center position is such an important one, clearly, down the middle. If you're winning, it's because you've got a very strong players up the middle. You've got that depth to win with. Now, there are some versatility in some of the players that are out there. Thomas can play the wing as well. So situationally, depending on how the matchup works out, you can throw him on the right side or keep him at the dot. But it certainly seems like for a number of teams that the center position is the priority, but it's not preventing them from exploring what other options may be available to them on the wing, whether it's a Connor Garland who has term. His new contract doesn't kick in until July 1. Which is also when his no trade protection kicks in. So they're kind of taking a look and you want to cast a bit of a wide net, even if your priorities are, A and B, because the option C might come at a solid value that you might have to pounce on.
Robert Thomas, we saw the other day the Mammoth get tied to him. I think that's the leading article on thefourthperiod.com right now is Utah's interest in St. Louis's centerman. We know that Bill Armstrong obviously has that St. Louis connection. He was part of the group that drafted Robert Thomas. What have you heard specifically about the St. Louis superstar?
The price tag is very high. And there are only a select number of teams that have the type of assets that I think St. Louis would consider. And I'll throw the Montreal Canadiens in that mix as well as a team that has the assets that they would likely be looking for, which include top prospects and high draft picks. And as I mentioned earlier with Utah, they have those pieces, but they're not going to give them up unless it's somebody here that they're going to build with for the foreseeable future. And for Robert Thomas, 26 years old, kind of fits that mold quite nicely for, frankly, both teams, the Utah Mammoth and the Montreal Canadiens. And there are other teams that would like that as well. I think Ottawa, to a certain extent, has kicked the tires there to see if there might be a fit on that front. But this is going to cost a top prospect, a first-round pick, and an additional asset in order to make it happen, at the very least. So you're looking at a very, very substantial return St. Louis is looking for if they part with Robert Thomas. Jordan Kyrou is also in that mix. His price tag's a little bit lower, and it seems like they've been a little bit more aggressive overall since dating back to last offseason with respect to Kyrou. But the interest in Thomas has definitely picked up over the last week. And it wouldn't surprise anybody at this stage if the Blues pull it off, but on condition that somebody meets that price tag.
It's an interesting situation in St. Louis, is it not? It feels like a changing of the guard on the ice, but also in the front office with Alex Steen set to take over as GM there. Is this a full teardown situation for the Blues? I mean, what can we expect? Do you see them trading both of those guys?
I think it's a possibility. It may not necessarily happen ahead of Friday's deadline. This may be, in any conversations that happen now, the foundation is obviously being created. That may continue and carry out until the draft in Buffalo at the end of June. There's that possibility as well. In addition to that, free agency in July, free agent class is relatively thin. The pool's not overly deep. So teams that lose out on some of the guys that are available, they may have to revert to the trade market. And some of those teams that have had conversations with the Blues about a number of their players may circle back and go in that direction. I believe that Steen and Doug Armstrong, the current GM, have, first of all, Doug Armstrong is making the final calls, but I don't believe that he's doing it exclusively, that they are on the same wavelength here to a certain extent with respect to the decision-making and how this team is going to look once Steen takes over. But they're exploring a multitude of options. It would not surprise me again if both Kyrou and Thomas are moved, or at least not on the team next season. Whenever that happens, we'll have to wait and see. But it doesn't sound like they're the only guys either. Again, St. Louis has a long list of players they're willing to listen on.
A couple days ago, you tweeted that the LA Kings are in the mix for, I think it was another top six forward in the wake of Kevin Fiala's injury, of course, at the Olympics. They just fired Jim Hiller. They're one of the teams that's chasing Utah in the standings right now. How aggressive do you see LA being on the outside looking in currently?
Yeah, they're continuing to look to add to that. And you can add Andrei Kuzmenko to the mix. He's done for the regular season as well with his injury as he comes back from surgery and mends as well. He'll presumably be back for playoff time. Fiala done for the full swing until next season. They're looking to see if they can add another top six forward, as I mentioned. And not only that, now with Kuzmenko out, I could certainly see them looking to bring in somebody for that third line on the wing to add some stability to that roster. They have a lot of cap space, to play with. They can add more if they want to throw Fiala on season-ending LTIR. They got about $12.5 million right now, so it gives them a lot of flexibility to add. But Kenny Holland is certainly doing that and trying to see if he can add a piece or two here ahead of the deadline. We know they brought in Artemi Panarin before the Olympic freeze. They didn't just bring him in to just coast the rest of the season and worry about next year afterwards. They still want to make the playoffs this year. It's Andrei Kopitar's last season. He's retiring at the end of the year. They'd like to make that happen, but they're also keeping a little bit of the future in mind too. So they're an interesting team moving forward, but without question, they'd like to add a piece or two here, even after adding Panarin.
How do you view this year's defense market at the trade deadline? It feels like the last couple of years, it's been the Chris Tanev sweepstakes, but we've got a few more names in the mix this year. It feels like across the league. I guess, where do you see that aspect of this year's deadline?
Yeah, there are a lot of blue liners that are also out there, but a lot of guys that have term as well, not just guys on expiring contracts. And the guys on expiring contracts, you can just look at San Jose. They've got a number of those players: Timothy Liljegren, Mario Ferrero, John Klingberg, Vinny Desharnais, even Nick Leddy, all on expiring deals, all players that they've talked to teams about throughout portions of the season, and are popular guys going into the trade deadline later on Friday. But in addition to that, yeah, it is players with term. And it's the Justin Falks, as we talked about, with 1 year left. Rasmus Ristolainen in Philadelphia, he's got another year left on his contract. He's drawn a lot of interest as well. Nick Pervix in Nashville has got a couple years left. He's a player that has drawn interest, and so on and so on. So it's not just teams exclusively fishing in the free agent or the pending free agent pool. They're also looking at other guys that have term that could be an asset to add after the fact. So, and that being not just this season and on. So it sounds like there are a bunch of different options that are available out there, including, again, some of the guys on expiring deals. You can also look at Winnipeg. They've got Logan Stanley and Luke Shen, two prime candidates to be moved by Friday's deadline.
It's I think it was Isaiah Thomas who has had the line around the trade deadline and the draft. Everybody lies. What's it like for you as a reporter trying to
Yeah.
navigate the information, misinformation, and counterintelligence that's being spewed about by front offices across the league?
Yeah, it's interesting to dissect everything that you're getting told, because it's not so much lies, it's half truths that you have to really dissect and comb through and make sure you're getting the right information. You're getting some information, you're just not getting necessarily the whole picture, and that's what takes up a lot of time in trying to dissect and decipher what that looks like and how it looks like and who's available, who isn't available. And yeah, it's looking this direction, but hey, see, don't forget what's going on over here. So it does take a lot. You're making a lot of calls. You're calling as many people as you can, people in management, some of the scouts, agents, some players, and so on, coaches, to try to get an understanding as to what is the full truth here before putting stuff out. But this time of year is interesting. There are a lot of conversations. We just want to see action. So let's see what type of fireworks we get here over these next few days.
Well, David, we appreciate the time. I want to let you get back to the phones. Before I cut you loose, though, I just want to throw one more out at you. Is there anything in Utah we should be looking out for, whether it's with the Mammoth or across the league, that we haven't gotten to yet?
I just keep tabs on this club, and I'm very curious to see what Bill Armstrong pulls off here over the next few days. Again, big fish hunting. They're trying to add a big piece for this group. If not, maybe a little bit of depth kind of adds in at both ends of the ice. You can never have too many defensemen, never have too many depth pieces come playoff time. But I will say this: I was at the first game last season in Salt Lake City. I was jacked by the fan reaction and everything that was going on in the city. I can only imagine how intense it'll be with the first playoff game later on in April if they get to that point. That's got to be something special, and I might even get out there for it. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Friday's deadline. I think the Utah Mammoth will have a couple of little tricks up their sleeve.
Oh, would love to see it, and would love to have you out as well. David, thank you for the time, and we'll keep tabs on your Twitter. Again, that's at The Fourth Period and thefourthperiod.com as well. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Mark.
That is great stuff. That's awesome. Great job, Mike, getting that interview for us with David. Tremendous insight, and we'll just keep it coming here on Mammoth Daily. Wednesday on the program, we'll recap tonight in Washington. Mike's morning after, and in our Odd Man Rush, president of hockey operations, Chris Armstrong. Dominic Moore on Thursday on what it's like to be a player during trade deadline week. So stay with us all week and every day right here on Mammoth Daily. We'll talk to you on Wednesday after what we expect to be 2 points in Washington tonight. Have a great day, everybody.